Freddie, how you doing, man?
Good, buddy. Nice to be back.
Nice to have you
How are you?
back, you posh motherfucker.
Well, as you can see, I've been trying to make my voice a little bit rougher around the edges.
You've not done a very good job.
No.
Must try harder.
The salt of the earth, Freddie.
You don't even need the microphone that close to you because your posh, deep British voice.
Yeah, it's booming away.
You been good?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Can't believe it's almost a year since I was on.
Is it a year?
Yeah, I think it was April last year.
Yeah, it was April. You're right.
God, I can't believe it's been a year.
Oh, you don't look a day older.
I do. Look, I've got these grey patches coming.
Oh,
It's been a busy year for you. We want to cover that because you're doing something super important. Super important.
it's a busy year for you too. Do you want to lubricate yourself
I
first?
don't know. What's the
What are you
time?
feeling like?
I've not got to drive anywhere.
Well, this was another little thank you. So last year we had the standard burnt ends. This is a burnt bridges. It's a bit higher proof. So if you want to,
God, I'll try a small amount. I've still got to drive today.
and this time we can't talk about 80s movies for the first 45 minutes.
We're going to go longer.
We're going to go 90s.
Is that enough or do you want more?
No, I've got to drive, man. It's funny. We did a movies thing recently with Grant, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, we did.
People love it or hate it. They're either like, oh my God, I love that when you don't talk about Bitcoin. It's so interesting. Or they're like, fuck you. Stop wasting my time.
Okay, well, cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Lovely to be back, guys.
They can
Thanks
just
for the
skip
invite.
it, can't they?
They can just
Cheers.
skip it. No. Started watching an interesting film last night, by the way. Zone of Interest.
I've never even heard of that.
So it's about it was about the Nazi I don't know if it's general, whatever his position is, who ran Auschwitz.
Oh, God, it's their house next door, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the
so
juxtaposition.
of their life
Exactly.
against the backdrop of that.
Oh, wow.
But they don't really allude to that. So you just know, like,
Oh, I've heard about this. Can you see like chimneys in the background and stuff?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
I've
Yeah.
heard about this.
and they really screw with you with the sound because you're like, I think I can hear someone screaming.
Oh, that's messed up.
And then you got these kids having like playing in the pool and they're flat. But it's incredibly done. So I recommend that. But let's not do a few hours of films because
We've done 1.5 minutes on
Yeah.
films.
That'll do.
we'll piss people
Skip
off.
forward.
We're recording in London, but we have you coming back to Bedford this Friday.
Yes, very excited.
Are you coming in Friday or Thursday?
I'm coming very early on Friday morning because I was chatting to Danny. We're doing this event with Gladstein in
Yes.
London on the Thursday. He's coming up that night. I've got to stay in handhold previous evening. And then I'll be coming up super early, hopefully in time to catch Hoddle. I think he's the opening speaker, isn't he?
He
Yeah.
is.
Exciting.
So we won't have you for the dinner.
Well, Peter's actually the opening speaker.
Oh,
Well, I'm not the opening speaker. I'm just welcome
MC.
everybody in 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you for coming into Cheat Code. We're so happy. We've tripled on last year. I mean, last year we had 150 people. Our target this year was 500, and we're like 20 away or something.
We'll go over
fantastic.
500
Yeah.
by the day, I think.
Getting that many people to Bedford. I just don't know. It's funny. One of those funny things. You'll probably understand this. I'm super self-conscious. It's my hometown, and people come and they will just see the things that are shit.
oh.
Whereas people come, there was like Jess messaged us this morning. It's helping us organise it. She's over, and she sent us photos. She's like, "It's beautiful," and I'm like,
The photo she sent doesn't look beautiful.
I don't know. She's like, "It's lovely," and I'm like, "That's near Midland Road. Midland Road is fucking terrible." But it's so cool to have that many people come to Bedford and
That's exciting.
create a groundswell.
And like you say, it's if it's something that's close to you and you feel really, really passionate about, you want to share it with people, and B, you want to make sure that when they come, they leave feeling similar to you when to your home.
Yeah, or energized to do. I think our goal wasn't it like to get people energized to do something
To
themselves?
go out and like use the cheat code, yeah.
Yeah, do something themselves.
Well, that's a brilliant idea. I mean, the reason we got going ourselves was because of the atmosphere in Edinburgh when a lot of our group. That's where I first met you, actually.
Yeah.
And there's when I bought my Bedford cap.
Hmm.
So I'm sure I'll be wearing that on Friday. So.
And Saturday.
Yeah, still don't want to mess up my hair. Yeah, so.
I don't have that problem.
All right, man. Well, listen, look, there's loads to get into. You've basically decided to do one of the most important jobs in the UK right now, and it requires someone to go put their hand up and say, I'm going to do this. Not everyone will have heard the show we made before. We'll have new people coming in who've just getting into Bitcoin. We're in a bull market. So I think we'll have to, let's assume people don't know anything. We won't cover the Rolls Royce. They can go back and, if you want to hear the Rolls Royce story, go back and listen to the last show we made with Freddie, because it will blow your fucking mind. But let's start by just explain what you're doing as a context, and then we'll get into why this is important.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I just mentioned the Edinburgh conference, and that was where a lot of the people who were in our group met each other. I helped to set up Bitcoin Policy UK, partly inspired by everyone in Edinburgh and all of the good stuff that was going on there, and also partly following in the footsteps of BPI in the US. People will be much more familiar with BPI and David's work and the others of the team there. So basically, until we were set up, there was no organization in the UK that was solely focused on advocating for Bitcoin. There were various other crypto lobbies, and we'll mention those during the course of the chat, but there was nothing focused purely on Bitcoin. And we basically identified a gap in the lobbying market, I suppose. And so we pulled together a bunch of volunteers. All of us are still volunteers. Most of us have other jobs, and we do this in our spare time. But we've, during the course of the last year, we've appointed a new CEO, Bill Aronson, Susie Violet Ward, who originally had a financial and accounting background, is now a journalist for Forbes.
Yeah, does great work.
Yeah, she's super focused on mining environment. Russell Rukin, who's originally an artist, actually, but very experienced in Bitcoin mining as well. And Matt Hall, who focuses on the younger kids on pre-med Bitcoin and really working on, we call that the next gen arm of the team.
Okay.
Susie and Russ are key to the mining and sustainability side of things. And then I work mainly on the policy angle. And during the course of the last year, we've kind of refined what our policy aims and goals are. And our main mission statement is quite simple. And we say this to politicians when we have these kind of conversations. We want everyone to have the chance to save in and to use a secure, decentralized money that can't be debased or manipulated by governments or central banks. And then everything else that we do flows from that single principle. We've got three main policy goals, and those, again, are quite simple. Number one for us is protect self-custody. That's absolutely fundamental. Number two is ensure that people can easily move in and out of fiat and Bitcoin. And that requires access to banking, financial freedoms, access to exchanges. And the third one is pushing for decent tax and regulatory positions that will help to bring inbound investment to the UK and generally foster the Bitcoin industry here.
And it's weird because the UK is in this unique position that it's we made the decision to exit the EU. We came out and said we wanted to be the crypto hub, but yeah, whatever, crypto Bitcoin. And yet we seem to not be taking this opportunity as a country. Well, let's put it in a fairer way. The government seemed to not be taking the opportunity that it has to lead the way certainly in Europe, and with that, be a leader across the world. Certainly, the US is ahead. Obviously, Argentina's ahead. Without doubt, El Salvador's ahead. And there are many other jurisdictions that are way ahead. We had the opportunity, still have the opportunity to lead in Europe, and we're not taking it.
Yes, this is something I feel very exercised about. I think you hit the nail on the head there. This is exactly something where we had the opportunity to differentiate ourselves from Europe and from the rest of the world, and we kind of fell over our own feet. I think if taking a step back, if I can summarize it all, is that our policy position is very confused. We have government's policy avowed, as you mentioned, that they want to make the UK into a crypto hub. So that's our policy line in the sand. And yet we've got a bunch of other different government departments, probably worth enumerating. We have Treasury, we have HMRC, we have the FCA and Bank of England. All of those have got a slightly different set of agenda points, and they approach the issue in a slightly different way. Treasury is a good example. You probably saw the Treasury report from last year. They got a lot of feedback from all over the industry. A lot of people, ourselves included, put a lot of time and effort into preparing feedback for them. And they came out and said, we think Bitcoin should be regulated as gambling. Which on the one hand is great because there's CGT, there's no, you wouldn't have to pay any capital gains tax then. But that report's largely been buried because it was such an outlier from the other reports the FCA, and I hope we get into this, they've categorized Bitcoin as a restricted mass market investment, which is worth coming back to in a bit more detail. But it's completely different from gambling. Bank of England have another view as well. They're really much more concerned about stable coins than they are about Bitcoin. They think Bitcoin's an amusing irrelevance that will eventually disappear. And then HMRC probably are the most supportive because they love taxing people. And at the moment, as you know, if you sell Bitcoin, then it's a capital gains tax event. So you've got 4 or 5 different departments, none of whom are really talking to each other, and all of whom have got a very different perspective of what the asset is and how to use it and whether or not it can be welcomed into the UK's economy or not.
Yeah, one of the challenging things here is, and I wonder this for most people, whether, well, let me put it a different way. The closer I've got to government, and I've got very close locally within Bedford, the more I've realised you have people making very important decisions on things they either don't understand or don't have the skills to make the right decisions about. And I'm going to assume it's the same at Whitehall, but you probably have just slightly more skilled than, say, local councillors. But the closer I've got, the more I've realised this, which is a huge problem. Because growing up, as a kid, you look up to government. You're like, wow, that's a government. They're politicians. They must be amazing and brilliant and intelligent because they've become a politician. Actually, I've just realised it's this huge, ridiculous grift of people who don't have the skills generally to make the decisions that they're making. Which is why I'm kind of like getting really drawn to the anarcho-capitalists now, because let the free market decide. Because why would we put a group of people in front of a free market that make everything more difficult and rent seek and destroy? Quite a bold statement, but anyway. But that's what I feel we're dealing with at the moment. So when you look at these departments and making decisions, you're thinking, well, who in there understands Bitcoin the same way maybe Adam Back does, or maybe understands economics like Lynn Auden, or maybe understands human rights like Alex Gladstein? Who are they talking to make these decisions? Or really, is it just a group of people who don't understand something, who are trying to do their best, but are acting from a place of fear and acting from a place of not wanting to make a poor decision? So therefore, it's the naturals to push back. Mm-hmm. It's a long, complicated question there.
There's quite a bit to unpack there. Yeah. So maybe starting at the end. So wanting to push back, I think, so the FCA is a good example of a government agency whose natural response is one of caution. And in some ways, I respect that. It's, in the same way that, the old adage, no one ever got fired for recommending you buy Microsoft.
IBM.
Was it IBM?
It was IBM.
Oh, I've completely misquoted. Well, hopefully you can edit that bit out.
So an interesting point on that. Do you know when that kept coming up in Bitcoin? So the people who manage pensions and institutional investment accounts and family offices and all these different investors, basically the Wall Street gang, they had the opposite position on Bitcoin, in that it's very easy for them to construct a portfolio. Why would they be the outlier and recommend Bitcoin and risk exposing themselves?
Yeah, and apart from anything else, if you come from that kind of background, it's extraordinarily difficult to value Bitcoin. My past life, I worked in the city. A lot of my friends still do, and I had a private equity background. When you're valuing a private equity company, you look at what's your EBITDA multiple, what's your discounted cash flow multiple. If you're valuing an asset manager, you look at their AUM multiple, the assets under management, and Bitcoin obviously doesn't have any of those things, and so from a financial investment point of view, you then think, well, what's its underlying, and if you're incapable of understanding, and it may be perfectly valid for you not to understand that. If you can't understand that it is a tangible hard asset that has certain unique properties and characteristics, then you look at it and think, well, this is just a JPEG. It's email. Why are all these people spending money on this? And
also, no one else has recommended it. Why should I take that risk?
Yeah, exactly.
I could be humiliated.
Exactly. And the last thing the FCA wants to do is to allow something and then there to be enormous customer harm deriving from it. I return again and again to this idea that the aim of good regulation should be the prevention of customer harm, particularly if you're in a customer-facing regulatory organisation, and that underlies almost everything the FCA do. And
sorry, can I jump in there? Yeah. Define harm, because I don't really want, me personally, having people defining what is harm to me. That's my decision.
I mean, I'm on your side of the fence here.
Yeah.
I think that you need to have personal responsibility for your own decisions, and you shouldn't be told what to do or what you can't do with your own money. And that's a very hard line in the sand for me. But a lot of what we have to do is to try. By we I mean to our organisation. We need to try and think our way into the shoes of the people that we're talking to, and so the FCA will look at Bitcoin, and they'll put it in the same bucket as Celsius and FTX and BlockFi and all of the other things that went wrong in the depths of the last bear. And they'll say, well, I don't want someone who's on a limited income aping in with all of their spare money and then losing everything in Celsius. And so they say, and this underlies a lot of the thinking behind the restrictions that we're currently facing in the UK, and why people in the UK may have noticed it's become a bit harder to buy Bitcoin recently.
A lot harder.
Yes. Do you want me to?
Yeah, I think you should explain what they've done.
Yeah, exactly. So I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that the FCA took a decision a while ago to categorize Bitcoin and all other crypto as a restricted mass market investment. The industry, us included, lobbied very hard against this. We wrote a very long paper. I think I punted you the link for the show notes on why that was an idiotic categorization. A restricted mass market investment is a very narrow list of investments, most of which can only be offered to the public under very specified circumstances and in certain ways. It's a very, very short list. It's about 4 or 5 different items, things like a peer-to-peer investment or very, very illiquid unit trusts, and then cryptocurrency. So the cryptocurrency, the fourth limb, I think, is a complete outlier. The FCA said in their feedback to the report, more than half of, a significant majority of the industry participants who responded said that this was an incorrect categorization and we were wrong to do it. So we'll go and do it anyway.
What is the process for you to engage with them on this, to try and lobby them to not make a poor decision?
2 or 3 different routes in. So we have been over the course of the last year, we've been building, I have to say, reasonably good relationships with the all-party parliamentary group in Parliament. So I think for people who may be not aware, there are all kinds of different interest groups within Parliament, and they include Lords and MPs from all parties. Clues in the name.
Yeah.
And there's one on crypto assets. There's one on blockchain as well. So we have been reaching out to them via Crypto UK, via personal contacts. I've been to a couple of the meetings now, had decent conversations with a number of the people there, and then have followed up those face-to-face conversations with written papers. You mentioned something quite interesting when you were talking about decision-making, Peter, the fact that you think that people in power know what they're talking about. In fairness, these guys are intensely busy and they don't have the kind of time that we may have had to really look into this stuff.
We heard a similar thing in the US, whereby most of the people in Congress, Elizabeth Warren as an example, they're incredibly busy and they've got to decide on policy on so many different issues. It's usually the staffers. Do we have a similar thing? Do we have essentially staffers here?
So the analogy we have for the Crypto APG is the Secretariat. So we're building relations with Crypto UK. And, for us as a Bitcoin-only organization, in a way, sometimes we have to dance with the devil. There are certain policies where we can work with Crypto UK and some where we think we can't. So,
who are Crypto UK? Are they another policy group?
Are they a shitcoin version of you?
If you want, If you want to come up with a tagline, yes.
And are there residual benefits from what they're doing for Bitcoin?
I'd say yes, and a good example is probably the second limb of our key policy points, and that's access to banking.
Right.
So one thing that we did recently, Chase Bank, you may remember, they said we're not going to allow any cryptocurrency payments whatsoever. So we drafted an open letter, we sent it in to the city minister, we published it, and let Crypto UK have a copy. They are also doing exactly the same thing, lobbying people in the same way. So I think insofar as access to Bitcoin is within the same Venn diagram as access to crypto, and we want banks to allow payments to exchanges and withdrawals from exchanges, that's something where we're in the same corner as they are. Where we're not in the same corner is, lobbying the government to run a CBDC on Ripple's XRP ledger. That is that is something where we are very much in the opposite corner. But we need to pick our battles, and
yeah,
I hope that makes sense.
No, that's fair. Do you want to carry on where you were previously? Do you remember where you were?
Restricted mass market investments. Right. So if you live in the UK and you've been trying to buy Bitcoin recently, you may have seen that you will have to have filled in a daft questionnaire.
Can I ask something on that?
Yes.
So I filled it in, and do you know what's interesting? I had it with Gemini. That's the exchange I use. And as I completed it, there was a standard questions, where does your income come from? Do you have, X amount? And I do pass the accredited investor checks for in terms of, is my income high enough to do this? But then they were asked some very specific questions related to Bitcoin and crypto, almost to test if I understand it.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what the question, I can't remember, something like, what is a blockchain, whatever. But it was like multiple choice questions, which I thought was interesting because I've never had that in previous accredited investor questionnaires. But as I was doing it, I was like thinking about, I've heard that on pornography sites, they ask if you're 18 or not, and you click yes
Allegedly.
or no. Apparently so.
Yeah,
and if you click yes, you're allowed in. If you click no, you're not. Is it essentially a souped up version of that? Can you? What happens if you just say, you just lie? What would happen?
Well, obviously, as
we wouldn't
lawyer,
advocate for it.
No, we wouldn't advocate for that. I think it's worth breaking down. There are sort of two limbs to what's going on here. So again, let's go back to restricted mass market investment. So that can only be offered to people in certain circumstances, and some of the people to whom it can be offered, they fall into three broad categories. One, you're a restricted investor, where you fall below a particular income. Two, you're a high net worth. You've got so much money that it doesn't matter if you lose some. And three, you're an accredited investor, or a sophisticated investor. And depending on which bucket you fall into, you'd be allowed to buy different amounts.
So I think, is it right that in the UK it's now you have to earn over 100,000 a year or have over 500,000 in assets, excluding your home? Is that right?
Yes, some of them will use slightly different categorizations for high net worth. So it ranges between 250 in some instances and 5, and then some of the to be honest, the definitions are loose and flexible. But
it's very exclusive.
Exactly, it's very, very wealthy people.
If you're in the bottom rung, are you not allowed any access, or are you allowed a small amount?
You are not allowed to purchase more than 10% of your annual income. So if you're filling in these questionnaires, you need to make sure that you don't intend to buy more than 10% in any particular financial year.
Okay, so say you earn 50,000 a year, you're allowed to buy 5,000.
Yes, on that exchange.
So you could have multiple exchanges.
Perhaps.
Yeah, it's a bit like, well, that's but it's simply because there's so many analogies to the gambling industry, which I'll come back to. But okay, so it's not you're not completely blocked, and for some people that might be a sensible amount. But we shouldn't be setting what's their sensible amount. They should be personally be able to do that. Yeah. But it's not a complete block.
No.
Okay. And
then the second, a second ago I called the questionnaires daft. I should probably retract that slightly, because in some ways I think you should be able to answer those questions if you want to buy Bitcoin. And actually, if you have a look at my pinned tweet, a piece of work we did at the beginning of this year, we went through as many of them as we could, and we put a walkthrough on that tweet thread for as many exchanges as we could do, a lot of them with video assistance as well. So if anyone is struggling with getting through those questions or answering them or working out what to do, have a look at my pinned tweet.
You're coaching.
We're providing examples of the kind of questions that you might be likely to be asked. Yeah, there's no harm if you're taking an exam, you should prepare for it. If you're going to be answering these questions, you should know the answers. And I think in retracting that, we always say go learn about Bitcoin first. If you have done your homework and you know about Bitcoin, none of these questions will be difficult for you.
So if anything, they've just created friction.
Yes, exactly right.
But have they created friction and they're okay with that, or have they created friction because they don't have the competency to create the actual blocks they want to? Is it like, yeah? I
think it's because they fundamentally still don't understand the asset.
Right.
They think that all cryptocurrency is a scam, and it all poses an enormous risk to people's financial safety and their general mental well-being further down the road if something goes wrong. What we've said to them actually is that if you care about customer harm, you wouldn't put these frictions in place because I can go and buy Bitcoin right now from whoever the hell I want using a VPN, and you can't stop me. We gave quite a few illustrations in our piece, the FCA, of how ultimately ineffective this would be, because we all know ways of buying. You can use BISC, you can use HODL, you can use Peach, you can buy peer-to-peer with no KYC.
RoboSats. Or,
exactly.
Yeah. But they're much harder.
They are much harder. Although the UX on Peach, I think,
they're getting much better.
Yeah, it's getting better. So I think the point there is that if you want to prevent people from purchasing Bitcoin, your regulation is completely ineffective. And arguably, it could make it worse if you go and buy from some dodgy exchange that doesn't have the Bitcoin that it's purportedly selling you. Arguably, your risk of customer harm is worse. And that was part of our argument as to why the categorization itself is incorrect. Also, I mean, you can mine Bitcoin at home. How can I possibly create a restricted mass market investment in my basement at home and heat my house with the byproduct? It's absolutely idiotic.
Well, it always comes back to this. It's Bitcoin's unstoppable in every single way, whether it's mining, purchasing, every way you try and stop Bitcoin, it just routes around you. It's that thing like, right, you're in a stream, stop the stream from flowing. How do you do it?
Yeah.
You can't.
No,
it just flows around you in every single way.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing for people to get their head around.
It's very tough, particularly when you come from a TradFi background and your instinctive reaction to being shown a payment flow is that, we'll just stop this at one of the choke points. We'll write to the bank and we'll get an injunction. And this far better than I do. We're in a very, very lengthy process of educating people. This system does not function like that. You cannot freeze a UTXO. You may have seen recently the news story about the huge Bitcoin confiscation from the woman. I think she had over 1,000 Bitcoin.
No, I don't know about this.
I was worth looking up. She I think she got busted because she was trying to buy a house with some of the laundered funds.
This isn't to do with the Bitfinex hack a while ago, is it?
No, it's not those people. Although those are absolutely hilarious, particularly the music videos from the Razzle Khan.
They don't look like hackers.
No,
who stole billions in Bitcoin.
No,
there's something strange going on.
Something weird. But I thought it was rather interesting the recent UK confiscation because I think all the coins were in self-custody and there was news stories of so an injunction, a freezing order has been issued over the coins, and you can't freeze a UTXO.
Yeah.
How on earth are you going to enforce that? Do they even have the keys?
I did see this. So
what is it?
Bitcoin worth £1.4 billion seized after ex-takeaway worker tried to buy a £23 million mansion. I did see this.
Who are they and how did they get the Bitcoin?
He's called Zhan Wen. I could be saying his name wrong. He was a front person that helped launder profits of a $5 billion investment fraud carried out in China between 2014 and 17.
But, some of the rather boring work that we do is explaining how the system works and how sends and receives work. And, ultimately, and I saw this, I was kind of encouraged the last meeting I went to in Parliament because there were lots of decent people in the room who were making these points. And even though a lot of them were shitcoiners, I think there's still merit in working with them as I said earlier, to the extent that our interests align and we want to pull in the same way. Because a lot of the poor regulation we're seeing emerge is not out of malice; it's simple misunderstanding, I think.
Yeah, and traditional ways of working.
Yeah.
Traditional ways of regulating based on, like you said, a TradFi world, and just not understanding this new world. Look, I get it. We can disagree with it, but you can see the rationale for it. And I just feel like we're almost chipping away at this old kind of model. Compared to the last cycle, we've had a couple of positive articles in the FT.
Mm-hmm.
I think they reluctantly admitted that maybe Bitcoin isn't going away. And it's just, I think the longer we go, the more Bitcoin achieves, the more people have it, the more people have to take a realistic view at this thing that you cannot stop.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one thing I'd like to push for going forwards, the last few events I've been to, the last few meetings, to be noticeable, everyone in the room has been coming at it from a financial perspective. I think we're really missing a trick in the UK. There were no miners in the room the last meeting I was in Parliament. And so at the moment, most people who are in Parliament, whether the Lords or the MPs, are coming at this purely from the perspective of a financial investment. And so they ask the same questions that we know so well. What's the intrinsic value? It's not backed by anything, blah, 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 blah. And you get tired with answering those. But at the same time, I think it would be fascinating to have people from the energy and infrastructure industry in the room.
Take the skilling guys with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know them?
Yeah, I know Mark. Yeah, Mark's an advisor to us.
Okay, great.
He's a great guy. And Jason Dean, for example, he's getting his new venture off the ground as well. There's a place for Paytech. I was at the. Have you seen what the Musket guys are doing?
Yeah,
that's the payment process.
Yeah,
right?
so
I met him in Madeira.
Yeah, so there's a.
He was in Bedford last year.
Yes.
Yeah, they've got a unified Lightning and Fiat point of sale terminal, which is another angle. It's important to have these different spokes of the wheel all coming together, and I just don't think that anyone in Parliament is at all aware of the amount of wind that is curtailed in Scotland, for example, and
how that could be used to generate essentially free money.
Exactly right. And greenhouses. A lot of greenhouses in East Anglia. And looking at what people are doing in the Netherlands with greenhouses. And so we've started to, now that I've got a good channel of communication open with the APPG, we've started to punt presentations into them. And I know that my last one was read. I had a response to it from Lisa Cameron, who's chair of the All Party Parliamentary Group. So part of our, again, stepping it back slightly, part of our strategy has been to get as much good, accurate information on Bitcoin into these channels as we can, because up until now, a lot of what they've been getting has been shitcoinery, and or from the Guardian or the New York Times or things that they've read at the weekend about how Bitcoin is boiling the ocean and it's going to kill all of us.
Who's the guy in the Guardian? Alex. There's one guy in the Guardian constantly writes nonsense.
Yeah,
Alex Wren or something, isn't it?
That sounds about right.
Alex.
Is it Lisa Cameron that is starting to come around to be more neutral to sort of positive on Bitcoin?
I think she's always been reasonably positive. She just is in the position that this is a new subject for her and she's interested in it. And she came to the Edinburgh conference, which was great.
Right,
that was where I first met her. And I think she's wanting to learn. Part of the disadvantage is that a lot of people want her time, and the shitcoin lobby in Westminster is very well funded, and frankly has a lot more firepower than we do.
What does well funded mean in terms of what they can do? Is it payment of staff to get things done, or is it use of that money to do other things?
I say it's a bit of both. So again, if we look at some tangible examples, so Crypto UK is a membership organisation. Crypto UK are the secretariat for the APPG. If you pay to be a member of Crypto UK, then you get a seat in the room at the table when these things are being discussed. We have to, we need to be a bit scrappy. Obviously, you can tell from my accent that I'm a dirty street fighter, and we have to scrap to get into the room.
Right, that's unfortunate.
Yes, well. But we've been in the room quite a lot more in the last 6 months than in the previous, so I think we're moving in the right direction.
How do we get to game changing positions on regulation? Like, who do we have to convince? Where do we have to convince people? Do we have to get to MPs?
That's an interesting question, because in some ways, my general perspective is that Bitcoin will succeed with or without regulation. For me, the key thing is really access to the on and off ramps.
Yeah.
And as long as that continues, and as long as the peer-to-peer options are viable and functional, then a lot of the other regulation is, as I mentioned earlier, completely ineffective. I think, in a weird sort of way, if you look at our regulation in the UK through another lens, what the FCA have done is they've actually pushed people towards no KYC and self-custody, completely unintentionally, I'm sure.
Odell would be proud.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So because they've made it so difficult for people to buy on the regular exchanges, I think a lot more people are going to be exploring going through the other options that we mentioned a few minutes ago, and then learning about taking Bitcoin into self-custody. So I think really it's the second limb of the three that I mentioned earlier. If we manage to preserve your ability to transfer funds to and from exchanges, and there's no imposition of a limit on how much Bitcoin you can own, then that problem is kind of solved.
Are you saying that's where we are, or you want to try and you obviously want to undo some of the limited limitations that have been in place recently, but are you saying there's a risk of getting even more limited?
I think there is, and actually probably worth talking about another negative piece of regulation which has had an impact on people in the UK. So one of our recent pieces was a short letter into various MPs and lords setting out the kind of restrictions that banks in the UK are placing on the amount that you can move on and off exchanges, or the amount that you can send let's say from Lloyd's to another account. So there's a list of those on our website. Some banks are relatively broad-minded. They don't impose a restriction. Some impose quite a significant restriction.
Shout out to Revolut, who are brilliant.
Yes.
They deserve that.
Monzo pretty good as well.
Monzo good as well, okay.
Yeah.
So it's unsurprising it's those two, though, right?
Yeah. I think Nationwide are actually reasonably good, which I find odd because they're quite a tradition. They were a building society originally, weren't they?
Should we shame the shit ones?
If you want, they're all shamed on the... there's a neat little table.
Well, it's useful for people to know because I get emails all the time. Yeah. Where should I go?
Yeah, exactly. The neobanks generally are better, with the exception of Starling, who are very, very anti. And I think Starling have recently blocked absolutely everything to and from. So
Wise are pretty terrible as well.
Are they?
Yeah. So this is how bad Wise are. I used to bank with them for the podcast and the football club and personally. And their rule was you cannot send to an exchange. Fine, I disagree with it, but I need a bank account. I had my bank account. They closed my account because I received money from Gemini as a sponsor. So from a company who's regulated, sending me fiat, they closed all of my accounts.
That's terrible. Gemini were one of the first to get a crypto asset registration in the UK.
Yep.
One of the first four. Coin Corner have got an interesting workaround. So you can open an e-money account in your own name at Coin Corner, and then you can send money to yourself. So it's an account in your name from yourself to yourself.
I think a lot of the Australian exchanges do a similar thing.
Okay. That's a decent workaround. Actually, the key point here, a lot of Bitcoiners are worried that this is indicative of banks choke pointing us. Ironically, in the UK, I think the real reason is a change that was recently made by the payment systems regulator. And this is to guard against what's called APP fraud, authorized push payment fraud. So the rules have recently changed, and from this year, if you have been a victim of APP fraud, the bank can be on the hook for 50% of the amount.
What is that fraud? I don't understand what that actually means.
It's when you have, APP fraud is when you have authorized a payment to a third party which turned out to be fraudulent.
Okay.
So let's say Peter's spun up an ERC20 shitcoin, and you send him money for that, and then he runs off into the distance having rug pulled you.
I see.
And then you say to the bank, "Why did you let me make this payment to Peter? He's clearly a criminal." And
but I hate these rules.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, exactly.
It's Danny's fault for being a fucking moron.
Yeah. This is
take responsibility.
This is banking nanny state.
Yeah. And I hate this stuff. It reminds me yeah. I can't talk about this constantly, but Lloyd's phoning me up, been with them 20 years, 22 years, asking me about payments I've made. I don't know who this person sounds, about 22 years old. I was like, 1, it's none of your fucking business. 2, I'm a grown up. 3, why would I tell you I don't know who you are? Like, no, I'm not telling you what. And they closed my account down because I wouldn't tell them what 2 payments were, which was Coinbase or something or other years ago. It's like, fuck off, none of your business.
But again, always look at the bottom line. So they don't care about you. They don't care about Danny losing his money. They care about them losing money. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. All they want to avoid is being on the hook for that money. Of course. So it's
the government's fault.
Exactly.
What rules should we make today to make life harder?
Well, it's these second order effects that emerge from rules which people make too hastily without having worked through all of the different possibilities. It's utterly infuriating.
But it goes back to the whole nanny state thing. It's like, let people make mistakes and learn from it. We can't insulate people from every stupid decision they make in life.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a financial freedom maximalist,
Yeah.
and the idea that you are prevented from doing what you want to do with your own money is just a complete anathema. People need to make mistakes, and there's no better way to learn than from a horrendous mistake that you yourself have made.
Yeah, I think it's this thing where governments. It's almost like think of someone like Preeti Patel when she was at the forefront of making lots of regulation and telling us what to do. I think some people, I don't know whether they just think this is my job or they get lost in authoritarianism. I don't know what it is, but they feel like they just have to tell us what to do and instruct us.
I think there's another thing to it though. Like all of us agree with that. I'm 100% agree with you. But I think if you ask like a wider part of the population, like, do you want the bank to protect you? Their answer would just be yes. And so with like little knowledge, I think people can agree with these rules.
Yeah, little knowledge.
Yeah.
But that's almost gaslighting people. It's like these free speech laws that have just come out in
Scotland.
It's like, well, we shouldn't allow these people to say mean things to us. Well, yeah, fine. You don't want them saying mean things to you, but do you really want it regulated? Do you understand what that actually means down the line? Do you understand who can use those laws to protect you from using your democratic right to free speech? Come on.
Which we don't really have in the UK anyway.
Not really.
But it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's a wonderful example of people pushing back against that kind of regulation. Have you seen how many complaints that the police have had? It's roughly one every minute since the law came into effect.
I love that.
So it makes it ineffective because they can't.
Well, it's going to be unenforceable because they've had 8,000. It's been in effect for just a few days. They've had 8,000 complaints. They have to investigate every single one of those. And they've recently said we're going to have to divert resources from actual crime.
It's like a DDoS attack on the police.
Hold on,
yeah, 100%.
But I don't understand
that's a great analogy.
Because they've made rules now. They don't. That, for example, certain burglaries or street crime, they don't investigate because it's too much work. But they've suddenly created all this work about words. Okay, you've been mugged on the street. We're not going to deal with it because we haven't got the police resource. But we're going to deal with we're going to put police resource into people who said mean words.
Well, ultimately they won't be able to.
No, of course they won't.
Because this will only snowball. One a minute. Let's get it up to one a second.
Yeah, but the point being the same. It's like fuck off, nanny state.
It is, and I mean, being completely honest, I don't fully know the way out of that, other than trying to set up your financial affairs in such a way as to isolate yourself from this. If you are able to ensure that you are able to move as much money as you need to an exchange in one or another way,
I think we miss something culturally. If you compare us to the US, they have this kind of culture of freedom. We don't think in terms of culture of freedom because we don't have constitutional protection. I know some people say, well, the Magna Carta. No, we don't have a constitution that we care about, think about, that we bring up in every argument or we bring up in the law courts. We don't say, well, this is a First Amendment protection. We just don't have that. A culture of, we don't, I mean, they think America is freedom. It's a country of freedom. It's like, freedom, yeah, USA. We don't have that. We have a culture of civility and not saying mean words.
Well, I think it goes back even further than that. It's an interesting technicality, but British people are not citizens. You're technically subjects. You're a subject of the crown. The whole of England and Wales, the reason we have such weird property law is because William took the whole of England and Wales as his personal estate. And that's why you buy an interest in land, you have a leasehold, you have a freehold. You mentioned the Constitution. We're one of the only countries in the world that doesn't have a written constitution. Our constitution is a hodgepodge of precedent and certain constitutional acts. The Human Rights Act is an example. That's known as one of our constitutional acts of Parliament, and that does contain, by its incorporation of the European Convention on Human Rights, that does contain rights to free speech and to other rights that people will be familiar with. That's a good one to focus on, but it's nothing like your constitutional protection of free speech in the United States. We are a society that is so hidebound by so many different restrictions that we just don't have the. I suppose the flip side of it in America is that if it's not restricted by law, then I'm allowed to do it, and the Constitution actually enshrines certain things that you definitely are allowed to do, like speak freely, like own a gun, like to have the right to due process, no undue confiscation.
We need a revolution, a constitution.
Well, I'd love to see a constitution like the United States. I think the Constitution of the United States is a magnificent document. It's a fantastic piece of work and written by some really, very far-sighted people, and I admire it a lot. And that's speaking as a lawyer, it's a wonderful, wonderful document.
I've said for a long time, I envy the fact they have a constitution because they're the basic. It's their consensus.
Yeah,
we don't have that.
Good way of thinking about it.
Just did we? Sorry, we've jumped around a lot. I'm not sure if we've finished any of the original points because we jumped around. Is there anything we've not finished there?
We haven't spoken very much about 80s movies, but I think I mean, I think that.
How do we compare to Europe?
That's a really interesting question because you would have thought Europe would be worse than us. But so the key, if anyone's not familiar with the key piece of legislation in Europe is MiCA. That's the Markets in Crypto Assets regulation. And that is a huge piece of legislation that does all kinds of stuff and tries to regulate the way in which the entire crypto asset market works, not just Bitcoin. And in some respects, that's not such a bad piece of legislation. Again, I come at this partly as a Bitcoin and partly as a lawyer. Insofar as it tries to set down some guardrails and parameters and rules for recognizing that these are real and they're not going away and they're real things, I think they've actually done a better job than we have so far in the UK. Paddy Hansen on Twitter is a great one to follow if you're on this. He and I had a sort of one-two over the last couple of days because you remember seeing 3 or 4 weeks ago there was a huge kerfuffle. Lots of people were tweeting that Europe was banning self-custody.
Yeah,
completely incorrect. And if you actually read the legislation itself, I actually found that rather encouraging because there's a tacit admission in there that they can't stop self-custody and they can't stop peer-to-peer transactions. All that the relevant piece of legislation is doing is restricting anonymity, which I have issues with from a completely different perspective. But if you're focusing very much on is self-custody still permitted and can I make peer-to-peer transactions between ourselves, absolutely you can. And I think they've acknowledged that they can't stop it if you read the wording of the legislation.
So what were they trying to do about anonymity?
It's we've said.
Can I tell you a story about this that might answer Danny's question?
Yeah, go for it.
Do you know the website Uphold?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't.
So Uphold, it's kind of like, it's an exchange, kinda, but it's probably one of the most regulatory friendly exchanges. But it does lots of other things. It's not just like a Coinbase. It's a bit more like a, what's a good example? I want to say Robinhood, but not Robinhood because it's not really shares. But anyway, forget that. It doesn't matter. I have an account with them, and because I registered with it when I first got the Brave browser, and I keep getting sent every month because of that, a certain amount in Bitcoin. It might be $50, $100, $150. Every month I just get it. Something to do with my Brave browser. And every month I just withdraw it. Just take it out and say thank you, whatever. The last time I withdrew it, it asked me, where am I sending it to? Who owns the wallet? Is it your wallet? Is it an exchange? Are you hosting the wallet?
And you have to answer these questions.
Have to answer these questions to have it sent to me
correctly.
Well, I mean, how do they prove it?
It's plausible deniability.
Yeah.
It's a checkbox exercise for compliance purposes.
Yeah. So I basically said, it's a self-hosted wallet. It is mine. But then once I've sent it, there's nothing stopping me hopping it again. This is why these rules are so fucking dumb.
But it's also why, in that sense, they are much less restrictive than you may initially think when you read a panicky tweet. So exactly as Peter said.
And you already KYC'd on this exchange?
Yes.
Essentially, you're doxing the first wallet that you send it to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be prudent for everyone to keep a deliberately doxed wallet.
A hot wallet.
Yeah, exactly. A hot wallet. That's a nice phrase. Did you make that up?
I just made it up right now. I'm going to start a new company. Rabbit Bitcoin with your hot wallet.
Hot wallet. Love it.
There you go.
Yeah. So for your first jump from an exchange, you have your doxed wallet. And then looking further ahead in the future, something that might be advisable is if you ever did want to do something so foolish as to sell Bitcoin, you would transfer it back to the exchange from your hot wallet because they'll recognize that.
Hot wallet TM.
Yeah.
Don't steal that shit.
You better trademark that before this show goes out.
Yeah, but again, it's every single piece of regulation is putting your hands in front of the streams trying to stop the water. Every single time.
Exactly. So, I mean, taking a more holistic view of this, there are sort of two broad ways you can fight bad law and regulation. You can fight them before they're passed, and I'm afraid in many instances it's already too late for us to do that because the wheels are in motion. You can find them after they're passed by demonstrating that they are ineffective and achieve the opposite of what they were intended to achieve. But that's a much longer battle, and that will, in some senses, require a change in personnel. It may require a Bukele, or it may require
a McCormack.
So.
Future mayor of Bedford.
First
go from mayor to PM.
I mean, you can see the. It's just a lot of people think I'm going to go for mayor of Bedford, but I've decided not to.
I still think you're going to.
I'm not. I'm going to become I've decided I'm going to fight from the outside as the unelected mayor of Bedford.
Well, a lot of Roman emperors started off as generals. So
after the revolution.
There's a problem if you fight from the inside. I think you get stuck in the mud, and you have to horse trade and do deals, and you become part of the problem. If you do it from the outside, you just throw hand grenades and YOLO.
This is why I'm not a politician.
Yeah,
I would. I mean, you said something quite interesting earlier about the extent to which Priti Patel, for example, was making regulation. We forget from the outside sometimes that a politician's job is to make laws. And I don't think you could find a single example of a parliament that ended with fewer laws on the statute book than when they started.
Look, you only have to watch House of Cards. House of Cards is a great education. It's a great education of how politics works. It's corridors of power, trade-offs from a mixture of people who have good intentions but have to do deals, and corrupt people who do deals. But I think it trends towards less freedom, more bullshit, more corruption. And I think to try and fight that from the inside, I think the only way you can do it is as a Bukele and a Millet, although
Millet's fucking up.
Yeah, there's the only way you can do it is you have complete control to do it. And so I think the best way is to fight it from the outside. I think you need revolution. I think you need an electorate who makes the elected officials realize you represent us and we will not take your shit. And I'm going to do it in Bedford.
I
fight the power.
I think it's worth exploring that as well. So one thing that we found quite encouraging in the last year was the CBDC consultation the Bank of England put out. So we pushed very, very hard to get as many responses as possible. And in the end, more than 50,000 responses were sent into the Bank of England. It's not dissimilar to the Scottish hate speech law. They had 8,000 in a couple of weeks. We had 50,000 responses, and some of them would have been very lengthy. Ours was about 30 pages long. So they got, and virtually every single one I read, apart from Ripple's, was negative. What a massive surprise. But
fuck you, Brad.
I think it's important to let politicians understand that this is potentially going to be an electoral issue. And once they get that into their heads, then I think we're over the hump. And it may still take a long time for actual changes to come. But once they realize that a lot of people hold Bitcoin and a lot of people care very deeply about it, and it could become a single issue voting block, then I think we're cooking with gas.
You have to make elected officials realize they represent the electorate.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. So that means you need either. Somebody said there's two important numbers for being able to fight against power or fight against these things. You either need to be rich and have fuck you money, or old and not care. They're the two things that matter, which is why J.K. Rowling has been very public, because she has fuck you money, she doesn't care. And sometimes you get old people who just don't care. But most people just don't want to put their head above the parapet because they don't want to lose their job, or they don't want to get cancelled. There's too much risk. But I think the problem is we need to organize people outside of politics, outside of political parties. Honestly, I've become so exposed to it just within my local council and my local mayor that I've just realized, we're all stuck in this stupid fucking game. We're all being used.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that their actions and their voice are important. Have you read Watchmen or seen the movie?
Oh, yeah, I've seen The Watchmen.
Yeah,
Who watches The Watchmen?
Yeah, exactly.
You've never seen The Watchmen?
No. Are we getting into movies again?
No, we're not. No. We've got a movie embargo.
Look. By the way, you should watch the movie. It was brilliant and a disappointment.
Have you read the book, the graphic novel?
I try, but it's a comic.
There's some great lines in there, but something you just said reminded me of, governments, people shouldn't fear their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. They represent us. They're there by our good graces. And we need to remind them in many instances that they're there because we want them to be there, and we can take that away. And the CBDC efforts that we're fighting at the moment are very much that. Any politician who supports a CBDC in the UK needs to pay the price with their seat at the next election. And we need to make it absolutely clear to these people that if they support the primary legislation needed to put those things in place, that if they support a CBDC, if they want to restrict people's financial freedom, then they're going to fucking pay. And, I don't mean pay by, a revolution. They will just lose their seat at the next election.
Yeah.
You want to hold on to power. You don't do things like this, which people in this country do not want. And, we can be very sensible and clear and firm about that. But, if they push for it, then they're going to lose their seats.
Mm. Do we have any allies? Because we do. Because I'm going to say, like in the US, it's so clear. You have Ted Cruz, you have Cynthia Lummis. It's like very clear allies who are pro Bitcoin, very supportive, who understand it. I know there's some people. Is it Steve Black?
Steve Baker.
Steve Baker. Sorry, is Wickham? Is he Wickham?
I forget his seat, but he gave a very good speech in Parliament in 2014. Actually,
a long time ago.
Yeah,
Just
on
on the
watching.
podcast.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, and then Tuggan.
Tom Tugendhat.
Yeah, he's a bit more ETH.
Well,
He talked about ETH in Parliament, didn't he? Sorry, I always
A lot
forget
of
these
them
people's
might.
names.
Did you hear the podcast with Ed Balls and George Osborne recently?
No.
Whose podcast?
I think it was Ed Balls' podcast.
He's got his own one.
Everyone's got a podcast.
Yes, don't worry, it's not as big as what Bitcoin did.
What's it called? Please tell me it's a playing balls.
I can't.
Balls pod.
I can't remember the name of it, but
I'll check it out. Okay.
yeah, it's really worth listening to, because by the end of it, I was thinking, God, Ed Balls is a secret maxi, so I think he could potentially be.
Why? What were they saying?
Just a very sensible conversation about what Bitcoin is and how it works, and does it have a future? And Osborne was saying, Bitcoin is here to stay. It's not going away. It has these properties. And it's like, Jesus Christ,
Wow.
Osborne, who got to you? He did then mention ETH as well, but give him time. He's probably still in his 2017 period.
I want them to cover on the rest of politics. I think they do a great job on that show.
We'd love to
Yeah.
get Rory Stewart on board.
I think the two of them would come together with a very rational agreement on it in the end. Even Alistair Campbell.
Well, I think with Bitcoin, with a lot of these things, you need to find out what someone cares about. And this is why I return to the mortgage issue so much.
Yeah.
There's a fascinating... Would you like a drop more, Peter?
I'll take my last sip and say thank you.
There's a really interesting Bank of England paper. Sorry, I realise I sound like such a geek when I say that. Also from 2014, funnily enough. It's called Money Creation in the Modern Economy. Strongly recommend anyone interested in Bitcoin reads that. And it's literally mind-blowing because, obviously you're not taught any of this stuff in school. You think that you deposit money in a bank and then the bank lends that money out and creates income by charging a spread on the amount of interest it pays you and the amount of interest it gets from people to whom it lends. It doesn't work like that at all. The Bank of England creates central bank money, and we encounter that normally in the form of cash, notes and coins. And commercial banks create the majority of money in the economy by making loans. And then those loans are written down as assets in the commercial bank's books and as a liability in yours. Every single piece of money, apart from Bitcoin and gold, I suppose, in fairness to Peter Schiff, every single piece of money is someone else's liability. And the rate of money creation by the commercial banks is extraordinarily high. It's one of the reasons that housing is so unaffordable.
Yeah.
And a lot of the conversations I have with people are not about Bitcoin per se, but about, what's fundamentally wrong with our financial system and the way that money is manipulated and created and destroyed. Find what someone cares about, and whether that's someone who has strong environmental concerns, or are they worried about how much energy we're wasting, or how on earth are we going to make offshore wind viable? I mean, you know far better than I do all of the different facets that Bitcoin has that you can explore. But going straight in and saying, we've created this unstoppable money and we're going to build citadels and
if you don't like it,
have fun
staying
staying poor. Yeah, exactly. Fun those things maybe to say. I don't think that helps us, certainly in my little garden of trying to do things for Bitcoin, that I don't think that moves the needle as much as finding something that someone cares about and showing how Bitcoin can help to solve a problem they want to solve.
So what other allies do we have, or who?
Names or organizations?
Both. Like, it's interesting to know.
Organizations, I'd give a shout out to Big Brother Watch. They do really great things, pushing back against a lot of the surveillance society, both in terms of...
I've seen a lot of good work they've done with the CBDC stuff.
Yeah, they're brilliant. So I went to their CBDC report launch in Parliament, and we're on good terms with several of those guys. Some of the team are coming to our event on April 11th, actually.
We should invite them to
Can we get them to come on Friday?
I'll ask.
Yeah, just if they want to come, we'll sort it out.
Oh, brilliant. I'll mention it to them.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so they're really decent people. The Open Democracy guys, we've been working with them over in Europe. So we drafted a long piece in defense of Bitcoin mining. Actually, backtracking is something we said a few minutes ago on MiCA and regulation in Europe. I think the key vulnerability for us in Europe is actually anti-mining.
Yeah.
And you'll have had people on talking about this previously.
Well, actually, we haven't covered the anti-mining in Europe really.
Oh,
only very lightly.
Yeah, very lightly. What? Yeah, Rachel guys.
Okay. Well, she's brilliant. Yeah.
She's amazing.
She's one of.
She's like a force of nature.
So the thrust of our response to ESMA, which is they're the European Securities and Markets Association, they want to bring in reporting obligations for crypto asset companies or crypto assets, setting out the negative impacts of the mining activities on the environment. And we went in quite hard and we said, well, fair enough, but you need to require everyone to tell you what you're doing in positive terms for the environment as well. And here's a huge list of everything positive for the environment about Bitcoin mining. All of which you guys will know about. You've had people we probably went to town on that report.
Stop being rational and real, Freddie. They don't want this. They just want to fucking ban it.
Well, the flip side of that is you don't want to ban it, you fucking can't.
Yeah.
So you can have rational Freddie, or you can have drunk and irrational, and
let's have him.
Suck my head balls, Freddie.
Okay. Only after 8 p.m.
Okay. CBDCs, where are we at? I'm conscious of time.
CBDCs. Well, the good thing from a UK perspective is that they cannot create one without primary legislation.
Okay. And
primary legislation means going through both houses of Parliament and getting royal assent. And like I mentioned earlier, anyone who votes for one, I want them to know very clearly they're going to lose their seat at the next election. I think the great thing that we have in CBDC terms is the more people learn about them, the more they hate them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we were really encouraged by the response when we were putting together our own responses. Community really pulled together. And this is something where, Bitcoiners and everyone who likes financial freedom and autonomy and the freedom to transact, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet here. And there are various organizations like Big Brother Watch, like Open Democracy, Together. All kinds of people are going to push back against these. And the great thing is that together we can make quite a lot of noise, and something that it's also quite a simple message. Do you want the government to have more control over your money? If the answer to that's no, then you're on our side. We will keep monitoring for more consultations. There are consultations going on at the moment. I wrote a piece and we submitted it just last week. That's the latest piece on our website around privacy concerns. And we just got to keep hammering these points. Keep an eye out for when these consultations are coming out. Keep responding. And then we begin direct action as well. So we want to, over the course of the next year or so, we want to develop a set of template letters and template emails to go to your MPs. Actually, without reinventing the wheel, Big Brother Watch have got a great one on their website right now. It's a very easy template form. I'd encourage anyone in the UK who's listening to this to log onto their website, fill in the form, just takes a few clicks, and it goes straight into your MP's inbox as an email saying, I don't like this. Do not vote for this. If you vote for this, I'll vote against you in the next election.
Brilliant. And how do people help you guys? I know money's the obvious one. Please do make a donation. Is it just that? Just give some fucking money.
I'd never be as mercenary as that.
I would be. I mean, give us fucking money.
That does help. So we have been raising money for two different projects. So one is raising money for books. In a similar way to what they've done in Congress in the US, and the other was for...
How much do you need for that?
Low thousands. I mean, people have been very generous since the time I was last on. We've got a geezer fund running, and we've got enough.
How much do you need though?
We could probably do it for 2 or 3 grand. We could get a set. We've got enough. We've raised enough to get books to some of the key people already.
Do you need 3 grand to what, to get everyone?
Probably, yeah.
Oh well, we'll do that one. That's done. We can give you the Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
We call that done. Just send me a.
It'd be embarrassing if we didn't take Bitcoin.
All right, yeah. Just send me an invoice. I'll do that.
Okay, I'll get you really drunk on Friday night.
I've already agreed to it. Okay, what else do you need?
So we've been raising money for various educational mining activities. So that's another geezer fund that's going. So Matt Hall, I mentioned earlier, he's been working on that. And we've had some very generous donations of miners, actually.
Yeah.
Old S9s. He's taking them into schools, and he's showing with a guy called Huxley, that's his name on Twitter, showing kids how to dismantle the miners, put them back together again, how the mining process works. So that's part of our longer game, teaching kids about, both about finance, about computer science, about mining as an industry. And then in terms of our way forward, so we've got this event on April 11th. So we're hosted jointly with Alex Gladstein and the Human Rights Foundation. So that's an exciting step for us. I think longer term, we'd like to be able to put on events with a policy angle like the BPI are doing. I think they're doing one this week actually in Washington.
Yeah. You want to do a different one, a similar one in London?
Similar one in London.
Can we help you in any way with that?
We should talk. I mean, if you want to get involved, then I know you have certain political sensitivities around.
Well, just if we can just help you get it going, we won't run it or whatever. Yeah, but just like, how do we help? Just let us know.
I mean, that would be amazing.
I mean, getting people in to speak would be one thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To be honest, bringing in really good people to speak is a key thing. That
if you aligned it with, that's so weird. That's just popped up.
just noticed that over the corner.
I don't know if we're still using that. That's on the website. If in some ways, if you aligned it with our event next year, you've got people already in, so they can do both, like you're doing this week. So that would just kind of make sense.
Yeah, when people are in the country.
Yeah.
So
okay. Well, we'll help.
Oh, thank you. We'll finish the bottle on Friday night.
Yeah.
And, I mean, obviously, I'd really like to go into the Goonies next time.
We did 80s film. We did 80s film. All right, I'll tell you what.
Next time we'll do 90s movies.
Small amount of film. What's the best recent film you've seen?
Ooh, that's a.
It's not allowed to be Oppenheimer because that's everyone's get out at the moment.
No, I haven't. I mean, these are not recent, but I've just watched all 3 Nolan Batmans with my kids
back to back.
Yeah, when my wife goes away, we can watch a Batman together.
Rank them in order of best to worst.
For rewatchability, I go for the first one. I like but I think as a quality of movie, the second one, The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger, I put that first. I think. What do you think?
I go 2, 1, 3. But I really liked 3, even though some didn't.
I like 3 as well.
Just some of the, I mean, Bane was brilliant, but some of the scenes, the American football stadium collapsing, it's incredible.
I love the ending of 3 as well. When you go, it takes you on such an emotional roller coaster. You're right at the depths. Sorry, have you seen it?
I've seen it.
Yay! No spoilers. And then you're right at the depths, and then you suddenly realize Bruce has left these breadcrumbs to show all the people he cares about that he's still alive.
Yeah.
Gordon looks up and sees the signals there. I just want to know if I could have done anything to fix the autopilot. But Mr. Fox, it's already been fixed. Check the ID on the patch. Bruce Wayne.
Did you watch the first remake with you remember
Pattinson?
Yeah, Robert
I haven't
Pattinson.
yet. Have you?
No, I've not seen that.
It's good. It's darker.
Ooh.
It's darker, but I liked it.
Okay.
I liked it. And they had that young Irish lad, Keegan, whatever his name is. The one. He was in it as the Joker. It's but I don't know if it's in the film. It might just be a cut that I saw on YouTube. But I liked it.
Have you seen Saltburn yet?
Yes. Oh my God, that's
I
shocking.
thought that was brilliant.
You know the weird Irish kid?
Yes.
He's getting bigger profile.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so
What did you think of it?
I was totally fucking weirded out by that. I thought it was really good, but
it was
God.
weird. Have you not
Everyone
seen it
keeps
yet?
No, everyone keeps saying that.
It's really good.
I tried Poor Things, which was weird, and gave up.
Oh yeah, my wife saw Poor Things. She's really, really disturbed by that as well.
Yeah, I stopped watching it. I just wasn't enjoying it.
Saltburn's like this weird mix of Brideshead Revisited and Talented Mr. Ripley and some probably weird stuff.
It's very good.
I'll go with that.
It is very good.
All right, Freddie, we avoided a big film chat. People will be happy. Always good to see you. Any way we can support you, let us know. Give us an invoice. We'll pay for those books and off we go.
Superstar. Well, guys, it was lovely to see you again. Thanks for having me back.
See you Friday.
Take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.